everyone. Happy Monday. Are we finally making progress in DevSecOps? I've been hoping and waiting for this for about 10 years. But we are using DevOps on the mainframe, and generative AI is driving spending on the cloud and everything else. We've got that and more. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel here from Techstrong. Welcome to our Monday show. It's October 7th, and just before we start, I just want to mention this is the anniversary of last year's attack by Hamas, terrorist attack against Israel, and we all know what has ensued in the year since then. And as we approach this one-year anniversary, unfortunately, I don't think we're done quite yet with peace breaking out all over the Middle East, but we do pray for that, and we'll see where the future goes. Beyond that, though, we're here on Techstrong Gang. We're not going to be discussing that today, I think, but we do have some interesting stuff to discuss, as I teased in the opening. We have a slice of our DevOps Next report as it applies to DevSecOps to go over. We're going to talk about DevOps and mainframes, as well as cloud spending being driven by generative AI. We've got a great lineup of people to discuss it with. Let me introduce you to our gang for this lovely Monday. First of all, joining us from Canada still, though I hope he's making his way down here soon. He's our nautical cybersecurity and other things expert, Chris Blask.
Good to see you, Alan.
Hey, Chris, good to see you, man. Hope all's good. Joining Chris and I today up in the Rocky Mountains, our CTO and future CTA, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you?
Flying high. Thank you very much.
Flying high. Looking good. Speaking of flying high, he's looking for a Subway series between the Mets and the Yankees. Our Chief Content Officer, CCO, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Fingers and toes are crossed. We'll see what happens.
I went to the last Subway series.
Me too.
I was at the game where Roger Clemens broke Piazza's bat, and Piazza threw the broken bat at him.
I was at the game where I sat down, Derek Jeter hit a home run, and then nothing happened for 9 innings. That was the end of the game.
That's a good way to. That's a good Yankee game right there, baby. All right, moving along from baseball to the mountains of New Mexico. She is a open source expert as well as the CEO founder of Deploy Hub, Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Alan. Again, thank you for having me. I always enjoy our Mondays together. Well,
you don't have to thank me. It's us who thank you for coming here, Tracy. You bring a lot more to this that we, can ever hope for. So thank you for joining us every Monday. You're the best. For those who may not, well, if you watch every Monday, Tracy has a different angle today. She seems to have turned the monitor around, and she doesn't have that angelic glow anymore. But
at least not yet. The sun is coming over. Yeah.
But, yeah. The day is young. Anyway, guys, let's jump into it. Mitch, you were the primary author behind the DevOps Next report. Today, we're looking at an article up on DevOps.com that really kind of zeroed in on DevSecOps progress. And this is something that's frankly near and dear to me, right? I've been a big DevSecOps proponent since people were throwing stuff at me for saying so. And but it's good to be vindicated. But are we being vindicated? Tell us, Mitch, what's the deal there?
Well, you don't see much data very often about this, so it's really great that was something we looked at in this DevOps Next analysis, the study that we did. Excuse me. Just to give you kind of some numbers, 47% of respondents said that they're regularly employing DevSecOps practices. Now, what is that? That's things like code scanning. Over half said that they're doing regular vulnerability scanning. Others are making investments in API security, application security investments. Some even at the high level, at a quarter, 20 to 25% of them in that range, depending on what you're talking about. So it's gone from let's shift left and kind of have the developers do code scanning and fixing problems to let's really start talking about the application security, the APIs, how do we secure that as well? And also working with other organizations like platform engineering. It isn't just a developer issue, right? It's leveraging teams like that to help create secure configurations and platforms that people are using to make sure that security guardrails and policies are being applied, and base images and platforms that are being set up for them. So it's vindication in the sense that we've gone from talking about it and telling developers they should do something about it to it really is happening. And it was a good percentage of our respondents. Now, security people are going to say, well, if 1% aren't doing it, then it's not good enough. Well, we're happy for progress, right? We'll get there. We'll get there over time. It's a nice change to see that is in motion.
I think if you look at the numbers, you can decide whether the glass is half full or half empty, because I think it said 47% are doing it, which in my mind means 53 or not. But it was also interesting when I looked at some of those numbers where there was more people said they were scanning code for vulnerabilities than said they were actually doing DevSecOps. So, Mitch, do you think people are making a distinction between, just scanning code isn't enough?
Well, it's a good point. Scanning code tends to be a starting point for DevSecOps. Going further, it's evolved as a definition too. It's like DevOps. There is no official. Here's the manifesto for. Well, I guess there is a DevSecOps page. I'm not sure that we all follow Shannon Leitz's exact definition of it. I think it's more of we're doing security in application software, whatever that is. But since we asked things about API security and platform engineering and other areas, it helped us kind of tease out. So what else besides code scanning? That's a basic. That should be a fundamental. I mean, that number should be 80, 90+%. But we're getting there.
Well, part of the problem is that we're just catching some of these. I think if you look at the survey, I would guess that most of those companies are just starting to catch up. Code scanning is and checking for vulnerabilities at the point of the build is a check mark, right? I don't know how useful it is. It's good at that moment, but then there's tomorrow, right? When the new vulnerabilities are found. So these very static practices are still behind the 8 ball. They're still not where we need to be. So while it's good that we have more companies adopting what I would call secure software frameworks, it's just not enough. We've had companies who have adopted a secure software framework, and they're still being impacted by bad vulnerabilities. So it's not solving the problem. And what I'm seeing is we're not doing enough innovation in the space. We're not doing enough to really address the bigger, broader problem, which is real-time checking of vulnerabilities all the time, not just when you do a build. And in terms of the discussion around APIs, I think I think it may have been last week or maybe the week before, we talked about AI security, and the API security is probably a super important one. Why anybody is running without an API gateway, I don't know, right? So we're getting caught up, but we're not doing enough to get ahead of the bad players.
So,
I would say it is. We still have a long ways to go. There's a lot of progress to be made, as well as what we have.
Well, we've made a lot as well, right? Because this is, with my continuous obsession with the past and the future. In the past, we could, it was classic to say, why aren't we writing better code? And the short answer was, all right, since nobody else is doing it, where's the budget for this extra time and people to do that to make my software slower or more expensive than my competitors? And it's obvious at some point in the future, yes, we're going to have secure code written and secure by design and cyber-informed engineering. And everything we're talking about here are where we are right now and these points along the way. And I love this one because the software bill of materials world that I'm all wrapped up in these days is I thought a couple of years ago would help with this, with one of these issues. And it really has. We see this, in my day job with Cybeats, where DevSecOps is getting along better with other teams when you can say, here's why, you see what's inside of, right? So all the comments everybody's making are very accurate and timely, and you can see from here, we start putting a couple more pieces together. I think this next era is a lot about integration of all these things. Like scanning, Tracy does nailed a perfect one. Scanning vulnerabilities when you're doing a build is lovely. Now, where are the other parts? What about in runtime and so forth? But we're getting there.
So my name's Alan Schimmel, and I'm here to tell you the good news. Okay, and I feel like I rang your doorbell on a Sunday, right? But so here's the deal, guys. Half full or half empty is still a hell of a lot better than there wasn't even a glass 10 years ago. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I remember I might have been a Sonatype State of Software Security survey 6, 7, 8 years ago, less, 5 years ago, that said they were touting, they were so happy, 75% of code was now being scanned for vulnerabilities before it was deployed. And I looked at that and said, what are these other 25% of people thinking? What were they thinking? But then I think back to when Mitchell and I started Still Secure, 2001. We came out with a vulnerability manager scanner, VAM, in I think 2003. And back then, it was a chore trying to get people to scan not code pre-deployment, but code in production, code out there, to get them to scan it at least once a year. Once a year, they were like, once a year, do you know it creates so many vulnerabilities? We only scan when they tell us we had to, right? Once a year. So think back to where we were and where we've come.
Well, you said it with that 75% thing. So on this Monday on the CISA SBOM weekly meeting, the UK NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center, gave a presentation. And one of those key points that I was looking for, that, not having an SBOM is a red flag now. Now, 2, 3, 4 years ago, nobody had a software bill of material. Now, it asks the same sort of question. If 75% are there and you're not, in any of these security issues at that time, then it becomes why would I buy your stuff at all?
Right, because it's a critical mass. You've got critical mass behind you. Now,
but let me just put it out there. Okay, SBOMs, so far so good. So what? Right. If you're not consuming the data, the developers, and you're not, analyzing it and chewing it up and spitting it back so that it's useful information, the developers are checking in their SBOM into Git. It's in a big fat text file, and nobody's doing anything with it, really. We are getting it done. We're adding it. But for most part, people can't even add SBOMs to their GCOS pipelines. It's a major stumbling block. So we have to figure out a way to make it easy for new tooling to be added to the DevOps pipeline, so new security tooling and be added. And like you said before, in this next year, I hope, because it would be good for Deploy Hub, if that's the truth, consolidating and federating the data is what is needed. And being able to continue to scan for vulnerabilities based on the SBOMs on the versions of the objects that are running in production all day long and reporting them all day long is where we need to be.
Once you have SBOMs, this is like when we moved from vulnerability management to NAC. Once you have SBOMs, you don't necessarily need to scan for vulnerabilities. You just scan your SBOM manifest or whatever you want to call it, and you know where your vulnerable pieces are, right? So when we did NAC, we stopped actually scanning the computer, or that was secondary. That was a secondary scan. At first, what we did is we just looked in the Windows reg, for instance. And so what version of antivirus did you have? And what version of Windows? And what version of this and that? And made sure you didn't have a known vulnerable version in there. And you can do that with SBOMs. But I'm going to focus on the good news. The whole concept of software supply chain security, born out of a terrible security incident, granted, but the whole industry ecosystem that's popped up around software supply chain security, including SBOMs, and has been given a lot of love and attention by CISA and the present administration, by the Linux Foundation and OpenSSF and a bunch of the foundations there, by industry in general, has brought DevSecOps and software supply chain security to the top of everyone's list. And
at the expense of DevOps.
Always a problem. What?
At the expense of DevOps.
Yes.
They did so at the expense of DevOps.
DevOps has become DevSecOps.
That's what it should have been. It shouldn't be. You have like at the Linux Foundation, which I'm very involved. You have the Continuous Delivery Foundation, then you have the OpenSSF, and they don't work together. They don't talk to each other. They're not trying to collaborate between.
That's politics.
It's politics. It happens. This is just a reflection of the culture in every enterprise. Every organization has their security team who's got this stuff that they're doing. And then the platform engineers, as we're calling them now, they're trying to keep, the new tooling in the system and do the best that they can, but they're not talking necessarily to the security teams. So on that topic, what we have to be able to do is start defining what compliance actually means. We don't have good discussion around what compliance looks like for security and software. And it's true, an SBOM is important, but what's important out of the SBOM are the packages. Where are packages running, and being able to understand the vulnerabilities for all those packages based on their version and what endpoint they're running on. And this is why security and DevOps have to be together, because they can't live in silos. You can have an SBOM, but if you don't know where the binary is that SBOM was that represents, it's not useful. The information has to get federated. It has to. And it has to be a DevSecOps solution, not a open source security solution or a supply chain issue. And then there are over here is people, they're doing their Jenkins workflows. We don't even, the Jenkins community expressed to me that they don't even really have people asking them how to add SBOMs to Jenkins, which I think is a problem.
So at the risk of telling the fellow with the good news to get off my lawn, most of the developers that I talk to basically, hate scanning, and that's generally false positives that they ignore, and they think the scanning tools aren't frankly all that good or helpful. And meanwhile, the folks who are running the SBOMs will tell you that, a fair number of the SBOMs are simply out of date because we're updating the software so fast that we didn't run the SBOM again after the update.
That is the point. That's why it's got to be added to the pipeline. A developer shouldn't have to scan their code. It shouldn't be a developer's job.
Let me jump in, because I think getting too tied up around SBOMs is sort of taking one issue and taking it too far. Yeah, a lot of stuff needs to happen with SBOMs. I agree with you. So I'm going to join Alan on the porch in my white shirt and black tie and talk a little bit about what some of the vendors are doing. So, hello, my name is, and so take GitHub, for example. Like, it isn't just buying a tool, plugging something in, right? It's building security into the pipeline, into the tool chain, right? In DevOps. So if you take GitHub, for example, they've come out with some new capabilities. They're advanced security features, things like code scanning when things are check-in. There's a code QL CLI for invoking scanning both locally and remote. There's secret scanning in your code. Again, there's also auto trigger rules, things you can do to invoke security processes and look at dependencies across this. And what's interesting about it, I gave a talk last week at NADOG, DevOps local user group in Denver, and we're talking about DevOps and AI, and sort of an ideation session broke out about talking of, well, what if we took some security principles like what we did back in the intrusion prevention days, Alan, of examining traffic and what's happening going in and outside of networks? What if we did that to our repositories, especially on large amounts of repositories, where we might say, hey, there's a lot of AI we could apply to this. Like suddenly we're seeing a lot of commits to this code repository that hasn't been touched by a number of years. Okay, not big deal, but it's from people we've never seen before. And we're seeing other activities here. So all of a sudden we see unusual anomalies in activities. Might not be anything, but might be a pattern that we can recognize, or seeing code that was checked in there showing up in other repositories. So people were thinking about, oh, how could I do some security things? These are developers, DevOps people, not vendors. So it's just, I think there's good things happening, and it's frustrating that it's not happening enough. And I get that. That's my suggestion. If you'd like to
Dependabot and Renovate, those are so easy.
Well, hold on, Tracy. I'm going to give you the last word. Go ahead.
I mean, to what Mitch said, when you have tools like Dependabot or Renovate that you can add in a GitHub action so easily, why are you not doing it?
Yeah, I agree. That has to be automated. It shouldn't be on the developer. Yes. Anyway, hey, we've gone overtime on this block. We need to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and talk about DevOps in the mainframe world. Stay tuned.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
All right, folks, we're back, and we're talking about a new report from BMC that shows that, well, there's progress being made in terms of adoption of DevOps in mainframes environments, and that's a long time in coming. Wait, hold on a minute. I hear a knock at the door.
More good news. I've got my little magazine. So again, I've got great good news. Here's the good news on this one, though. This is not new. Well, let me just preface this by saying BMC is a mainframe software tools provider. They bought CompuWare, which was also a mainframe, but they were both sort of leading lights in the DevOps on the mainframe platform and have been. But here's a dirty little secret. DevOps has been, or the mainframe community has been a friend of DevOps since DevOps first popped up, because the mainframe community saw DevOps as a way to modernize mainframes. And that's a big push in the mainframe world, right? Speaking of Linux Foundation, I work still with the Open Mainframe project there, the people behind Zoe, which is a huge DevOps on the mainframe force of nature. They just came out with a new version. I think we're doing some show on it soon. But the fact of the matter is, first of all, the mainframe's not going anywhere. For those of you who are, prematurely calling the mainframe is dead, you're out of your minds. No one's ripping those puppies out. There's too many trillions of dollars behind them. Secondly, from a security, stability, operability, they're still penny for penny, probably the most efficient, most secure platform we have. Third, BMC, Broadcom, IBM, Rocket, and a few others have done an amazing job of modernizing what we can run on DevOps. On mainframes, using DevOps frameworks and so forth. There's, from a language support, app support, they already really had containers before CNCF was born, right? It is a modern development platform, and why would it? When our DevOps Next survey says 77% of organizations are using DevOps, why wouldn't you use it on the mainframe? Why not? I mean, it's It works well together. It goes like chocolate and peanut butter. So if you wouldn't mind making a small donation, Mike?
Well, here's what I would ask in a very, let's keep this religious theme going. It seems to me that a lot of these shops are running both DevOps and Waterfall, and some of them have melded DevOps and Waterfall together in some unique way of their own and have their own little offshoot of the various religions that are out there.
So is that blasphemy? I mean,
I'm asking you, what is DevOps in that context? Am I how much leeway do people have? Because, I may just say that, I ran a CI routine. I'm doing DevOps, baby.
And maybe you are. Andrew Clay Schaefer says the DevOps you get is the DevOps you deserve.
Okay. All right. Wait a second. Let's just back up for a minute. Let's just back up for one stinking minute. Endeavor was the very first DevOps tool I ever touched. It stands for Environment for Developers and Operations. And we were doing incremental deployments when I first started in software. Literally, I never had to write my own compile JCL. I never had to guess what my configuration looked like because Endeavor took care of automated configuration management. I could make one code change and basically check it in. And if approved, if there was a quorum and it got approved, that one code change could go out. Everything I learned came from the mainframe. And while we think about the mainframe being kind of waterfall because it's got a life cycle, I suppose, there really isn't any difference. And everything we have learned in software, everything has come from the mainframe, including DevOps. And in fact, they continue to do a better job in DevOps than we do to this day. Now, when it comes to cross-platform, that's a different. When it comes to cross-platform, it's a different story because we've always struggled when we have objects that are on the mainframe, and this is a problem in banking. A lot of the fintech, you have objects running on the mainframe that connect to things that are running on a distributed platform. How do you make sure they march across the life cycle together? Those are different problems. And over time, we've seen new languages on the mainframe like Java that has brought a different culture into the space. And they may not be using Endeavor to manage that. So when we're talking about DevOps on the mainframe now, it's really a new group of mainframe developers who are not using a tool like Endeavor, and they're trying to look at other ways to manage the process, so that they can do more incremental releases and not do these monolithic deployments. So I just want to say that the mainframe was the
progenitor.
It was the example, and it should be the example to all of us. I was during the Obama administration, I got invited to look at what the problems were with all the electronic transfers that they were having across all these different platforms. And I had two meetings. One was with the distributed side and one was with the mainframe side. The mainframe side was really easy. There was two people that came in. We looked through everything they were doing. We talked about things that they could change, and it was done. 30 minutes, and I was done. I was happy. The afternoon session, there was 45 people in the room to manage the same process on the distributed platform, and we could not see heads or tails. And that's why I say that, the mainframe has always taught us the way, and we should still look at that as the example.
So, Mike, you've just heard from St. Tracy, the patron saint
of
mainframe DevOps. Okay? And on the second day, God created the mainframe.
I was going to say.
All I heard was distributed computing systems are broken. So I
but a new apostle. But hear me out on this. I think Tracy's dead on. Where the action has been in mainframe DevOps over the last 7 or 8 years has been on the bifurcation. I love when I use big words like this. Has been on the bifurcation of the systems of record versus the systems of engagement, right? Systems of records being the mainframe are still here. And many times your systems of engagement are distributed systems, or some may call it in the cloud. Right? And having those work together in sync has given rise to a lot of new tools, right? The CompuWare Topaz, which is now part of BMC, I think is a prime example of this. But there's more. The whole, as I mentioned, the Zoe project from Open Mainframe Project at Linux Foundation deals a lot with this. Running Java and Rust and other modern languages are mainframes. It's all part of bringing together these systems of record, system engagement on a bifurcated platforms where you have mainframe working with cloud or other distributed systems. And you know what? Companies are doing that. It's not the same as just being on a monolithic mainframe. But companies are doing it, and they're doing it well. The other thing is, I will just say, for as long as I've learned about DevOps and studied and listened to people about DevOps, no one ever said, waterfall is dead, long live DevOps. I've always heard from real DevOps people that you'd use the right methodology and the right tools for the job. And there are some things that lend themselves well to a waterfall or a fast waterfall. And there are some things that don't. Don't take your square peg and make it round if you've got a round peg that works well for that. And so there's nothing the matter with saying, yeah, I basically do waterfall, but I do a little CI with it or whatever. Is that DevOps? Again, the DevOps you get is the DevOps you deserve. And if it works for you, it works for you. We don't need any orthodoxies here, Michael. That's what these extremist things is what ruins it all. So,
but we do need security in your DevOps.
Yeah.
I just want to add that I think the testimony to Tracy, gives us hope, right? I had a couple of years working with Unisys, and much to my surprise, as you said, Alan, mainframes are still out there. Citibank buys mainframes from Unisys based on Dell hardware, and that's specifically how I ended up on my supply chain path. But they do it with high reliability. They do a lot of things that in the rest of the world we talk about, and you should have and had it. But much of it has been working. That's why the global financial system exists, because it is possible to hit some of these bars. Yes, in the great wild internet world, we haven't got there yet, but it's not because it's impossible.
Agreed. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about is Gen AI driving cloud spending? It's driving investment, that's for sure. But you're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back. And yes, we're going to be talking about how Gen AI is driving cloud spending. But we're more interested actually in what that means for IT organizations, because obviously the people making GPUs and the folks providing the cloud services are just getting richer. But Tracy, are we reaching a point where we're not going to have enough capacity and all of a sudden things are going to get held up? Prices might go up. I mean, as you look at this survey, what do you see for 2025?
Well, chargebacks have been a problem for quite some time. When we add AI to it, and Gen AI, which requires a lot of resources, and you have everybody doing something around Gen AI, anybody could have predicted that this was going to happen, I think. We haven't gotten our hands around managing chargebacks in general, right? Companies there's all kinds of reasons why chargebacks are a problem. And, we have organizational silos and nobody really knows who's using, who's costing the company so much money. because you can't see who's actually creating the chargebacks. Cost allocation across multiple cloud providers. How do we track that? So this was really kind of in the works when AI started up, and we started using more resources in our cloud environments without the ability to really see where the expenditures are. We as a small company struggle with this all the time. It's like, how did that get spun up? We need to bring it down because it's costing us, and it's been out there for a month and nobody's using it. This happens all the time. So now with Gen AI and so many teams that are experimenting with it, I can imagine that 30% year over year cost increase that was noted in this article is probably going to get to 50% in no time. So like many of the tasks that we do in software development, we're not ready for AI yet. While we have the tools that obviously we can build the software, we're not ready to manage the software. We're not ready to manage the cost. So we've got to figure out how to manage chargebacks. That's the basic problem, and that's not been solved. And I've always wondered, and the vendors have to be the ones who are providing the clear chargeback information, and maybe they don't want to. Maybe having that, having it obfuscated is part of their business model. Not that I want to say they're bad. I'm just saying they're there to make money. So how do we manage chargebacks is really the question that this article has here. And Mitch? I don't know how to answer that question.
All right. Well, I'll keep it going. Mitch, is this a cry for help? Basically, we need FinOps for Gen AI or something that feels kind of like, how are we going to manage all this stuff? Because right now, it just seems like there's a bunch of drunken AI data scientists spinning up GPUs at will, and nobody's paying attention.
What's changed?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's exactly the same. It's just now AI is there. It's a chargeback issue.
Well, we have another thing happening too here. All right. We have another thing happening here. And that's the FOMO problem with AI, which is, and organizations are investing and reserving GPUs, whether it's in the cloud or in the data centers of their own. And in the anticipation of not wanting to miss out on the benefits of AI, but not knowing yet what they're going to use it for, or in that experimentation phase that you're talking about. So we are also driving up cost of reserving resources for something we're anticipating that we're going to need. It isn't like we're suddenly maxing out the capacity of all the stuff that we're buying or reserving. There's a bit of a, let's make sure, it's like the baseball card, peak. Let's make sure we all get whatever the popular baseball cards are, and then the market crashes. I hope that doesn't happen here, but we do have kind of a run going on of trying to acquire these resources for AI applications.
Are you saying that there's GPU hoarding going on? Is that what I'm hearing?
There's a show coming out on A&E, the GPU hoarder.
Well, and again, this is just another indication of when you're early in a cycle, right? Because thinking through this
that's exactly it, Bill. Bill, Chris,
whoever I am. Chris. As Mitch was just saying, right?
Do we have a Bill on here? No.
It's possible. But on the SBOM topic, Tracy and I can go all day long, but that's really early, right? Maybe a little, later down the pipe than AI, but we're at the point with AI where Mitch's explanation makes perfect sense. I hadn't thought of it that way, but what does that, right? So we haven't even thought through the actual implications of using the stuff yet.
No, but it's just not AI though. And in fact, in the article, it pointed out that 93% of the people who responded said that they want to be able to see the expenses distributed across their departments and business units, because they can't see that to understand who they need to go to say you're overspending in this area. So it's kind of a free
I think we're really talking about two separate things though. Trace, you're describing the classic FinOps, and this is a topic we've discussed on DevOps.com and Cloud Native, and we've done some virtual events. Yes, the only thing worse than your cloud bill is your cell bill. Though I will tell you, the cell phone providers have gotten better. The cloud bill is just a mess, and it's done so on purpose to not let you really see what you're doing. However, not to paraphrase someone, but why do we need to listen to the experts when we could use some common sense? And common sense tells me, Mitch is smiling, he knows who I'm talking about. Common sense tells me that if everybody wants to use GPUs, and there's only so many GPUs, and most people aren't capable of running a GPU environment system in their own data center, they got to get it from some cloud provider. This is the time for the cloud providers to make hay, right? So common sense economics tells us that they're going to raise prices here and make money while they can. I'm not going to use the price gouging term, but that's the reality of where we are right now. I was talking earlier, a friend of mine just took over CMO as a company. Basically, it's GPU as a service, right? You could turn them on and off and without going through the whole cloud provider thing. And they have access to high-end NVIDIA GPUs. So, what's the answer here? I think the answer here is what Chris and Tracy alluded to, which is we're still early. As this thing sort of normalizes, cloud spending specifically for Gen AI will equal out. I don't think it's going to go down. I think Gen AI is a driver for more cloud spending.
Do you think AMD will make a difference here?
I'm sorry, what, Mike?
I said, do you think AMD will make a difference here? Because part of the issue is we're overly dependent upon NVIDIA, but they're both dependent upon the same manufacturing line in Taiwan somewhere.
That's like saying if we pump more oil, will gas prices go down? We've already seen that the amount of oil we pump really is not very related to the price of gas. There's so many other factors along the supply chain of it. And it just doesn't seem to have any rhyme or reason to how much oil we're pumping out of the ground or fracking out of rock or whatever, however we're getting our oil. I think it's the same thing. Gen AI is hot. GPUs are hot. FOMO plays a role in it, as Mitchell said. And the cloud providers are going to charge a premium for it. Because if I have the GPU...
Which may mean some organizations might be saying maybe we should have our own private clouds and we're going to get off paying the cloud provider.
And
it could happen.
And run GPUs. Okay, but that's going to be a specialization skill set that they're going to have to pay for.
And that's expensive too. That's not any cheaper. I mean, you're talking about big dollars.
Yep.
I don't know. I think I'll call up the president and see if we can get some cloud price control legislation going.
The last president I saw do price controls was Richard Nixon.
How'd that go?
I'm not a crook. Anyway.
It led to a bunch of whip inflation now buttons from
Yes,
Joel.
It did.
Yeah,
Mike, you're showing your age. You're showing your age, Mike. I don't know anything about that. But anyway,
late 70s.
I think the market, this is the rat and the snake, and it has to play itself out, is my kind of take on it. Anyway, guys, we've had 50 minutes of rollicking fun here. Let me just say, we have nothing against anybody's religion, and I don't care what you do or who you believe or who you pray to. So please don't hold it against me or any of us here. We're just having some fun. But that's going to take a wrap on this version of the Techstrong Gang. We will be back tomorrow with even more fun, I hope. It'll be Tuesday, and I'll actually be on that one, I think. Well, no, I'll still be here. I'll still be here in Boca. Mike, we hope to see you then. Mitchell, you're heading to Barcelona next week, right?
I am. I'm going to be doing some reports from the Atlassian Team 24 conference in Barcelona.
We'll enjoy Barcelona. Have some tapas for us. Tracy, anything in store for you?
Not a thing. I'm staying home.
Good for you. Chris, how about you?
Just staying here and hacking robots.
Beautiful. All right. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. You just watched Techstrong, gang.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.